I thought my wife was medicating herself, but now I know what her syringes were really being used for. I remember the first time I saw it. A small orange bin, with multiple warning labels, a clear lid, and what appeared to be a plastic lock that rivaled those classified as child-proof. And inside were syringes. Interesting, I thought to myself. Hey, honey? I asked her from the bathroom to the bedroom. Yeah? She called back. What's this? What's what? The container full of syringes. Oh, it's a container full of syringes. I know that much, honey, I chuckled, but what for? Are you okay? Oh, the fertility doctor said I need to inject myself daily with hormones to increase our chances of getting pregnant. Fair enough, I thought to myself. Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. And then, we didn't talk about it. For a couple weeks. Until I continued to see it there, and began wondering how long it'd be in the house. There was just something about a container of needles that gave me the creeps. Until I asked, hey honey? Yeah? She replied. How long will you have to keep up the treatment? Treatment? Yeah, with the syringes. Oh, right. Those. She paused for a moment, before continuing. It's hard to say. I have to go back and do some testing, and depending on how that turns out, I either have to keep taking it or I don't. Got it, I replied, not wanting to pry too much. Eventually, the plastic bin filled up with syringes, and then it disappeared. Until the next day, when a brand new, empty one showed up. After a while, the new one filled, and disappeared, and was replaced by another. And so on. And so on. To the point where the bin became so commonplace in the house, that my wife and I stopped speaking about it, and I nearly forgot about it. Until, a year later, when I saw that the bin was still in the house, and inquired about it again. Hey, honey? Yeah? She replied. Not to trouble you, but I just wanted to check in on your health. I see that the syringe container's still in the house, and was wondering how long you'll need to be using it. Oh, don't worry. The doctor said my illness was getting better. Illness? Yeah. The one I told you about. You didn't tell me about an illness, you told me, but I stopped myself, curious to see what she'd say. What illness is it? A perfectly non-threatening one. That needs to be treated is all. I see. Just another few months to a year and I'll be back to normal. And like that, she walked away. Illness? I thought to myself. But she had told me the needles were for fertility purposes. I started to grow suspicious, unsure which of her two explanations was a lie, but convinced that one of them had to be one. That's when I started to pay a little closer attention to my wife's comings and goings. And eventually noticed that every day, she would go out to the shed. Hey, honey? I asked. Yeah? She replied. What do you do out in the shed? The shed? Yeah, I see you going out there every day. And was just wondering what you do in there? Oh, right. The shed. Well, she hesitated. I water the plants. Plants? In the shed? Yeah, well I didn't want to clutter up the house, so I've been buying them and keeping them in there. I see. But you don't bring any water out with you? I keep a big bucket of water in there, so I only need to refill it every few weeks. Got it. It seemed to make sense, but something just didn't add up. So, one day, when she went out to run errands, I snuck out to the shed to see what was inside. But it was locked. She's keeping her plants locked up? I thought to myself, trying to make sense of the situation. But I shrugged it off, and went back inside. Until a few days later, when, after a few sleepless nights, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't let it go. So the next time my wife went out to run errands, I took an axe, cracked open the lock, and tossed the axe to the ground behind me. But what I didn't know, was that my wife had forgotten something in the house, and had come back while I was outside. And before I could open the door to the shed, I heard an ominous voice behind me. You shouldn't have done that. My wife said, her face completely deadpan. I turned around, to find her standing there. Honey, I just wanted to see the plants. I looked down at her hands. In one, was an unused syringe, cap still on. In the other, was the axe. Don't you dare open it, she commanded. Course not, I said, holding up my hands, as a display of peace. Now go inside. And never come out here again. Of course, honey. I don't know what I was thinking. I headed back inside, my body shaking in fear, as I saw her drop the axe and step inside the shed, closing the door behind her. Unable to process what had just happened, and too terrified to do anything about it, I went about my day business as usual, my mind consumed by what could possibly be in the shed. I tried to sleep that night, beside a woman who, for all I knew, was lying to me, and capable of horrible things. But I couldn't. So when I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and saw that she was fast asleep, I snuck downstairs, and went back out to the shed. This time, keeping my axe in my hand. There, I found the door to the shed still unlocked, its former shackle still lying on the lawn in pieces. I opened it, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me. And what I saw was grotesque. A bulbous, heaping pile of sludge, standing as tall as the shed itself, with barbed tentacles, and an uneven pair of eyes, that seemed to be slowly dripping down its body. I took a step back, but before I could even reach for the shed door, a tentacle wrapped around my leg. Not knowing what else to do, I raised my axe above my head, and brought its blade down onto the tentacle. The creature didn't react, but I suddenly heard my wife scream from the bedroom, as if she was in pain. It's linked to my wife, somehow, I realized, before looking back at the creature, seeing a few human bones below, and remembering the news of hikers disappearing in the woods behind our house over the past year. The monster started lashing out, its tentacles flailing and flailing, as it attempted to grab hold of me, while its slimy body formed into a barb-filled mouth, and began to move closer. I had no other option, but to defend myself, so I took my axe, and just started swinging at it. And each time I struck it, so too, did I hear my wife screaming out in pain, her voice getting closer, and closer, and closer. Until eventually, she arrived at the shed, screaming, "Stop. It was wounded. I was just treating it with medicine." But by the time she opened the shed door, it was too late. The creature had been hacked to pieces. And as the creature lay there, lifeless, so too did my wife, nearly unconscious from the traumatic experience. An hour or so later, she awoke, with no recollection of what had happened, that night, or the entire year prior, the bulbous monster having taken over both her mind and her memory. And when I tried to explain to her what had happened, and told her about the excuses she had made up, including the one about fertility, she replied, "Oh no, I wasn't even seeing a fertility doctor. But I could look into it?" To which I replied, "Let's just keep trying naturally. I've had enough needles for 1 year."